enlightening, very informative panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, our August gathering, a very warm and hearty welcome to all of us. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now we're going to have a very, very enlightening and informative panel discussion on developing port infrastructure for the green hydrogen ecosystem, bunkering and refueling. Now, I take this privilege to invite our moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I please may request all of us to put our hands together and help me welcome on the dais Mr. Saurabh Sood, Senior Transport Specialist, World Bank. Very, very warm welcome to you, sir. Mr. Sood is a Senior Transport Specialist with the World Bank. He has over 17 years of experience in infrastructure strategy and policy institution strengthening, financing, and economic regulation, and has worked led several large-scale national-level consulting engagement in railways, maritime, and inland water transport, urban mobility, economic corridors, and multi-modal logistics. Very, very warm welcome, sir, and we are honored to have you as our moderator. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I take this privilege to invite our eminent speaker, our panelist. Please put your hands together and help me welcome and invite on the dais Dr. Ennarasu Karunesan, Regional Director to India International Association of Ports and Harbours. Dr. Karunesan has 35 years of leadership in the maritime sector, including 25 years as President, Director, and CEO, Chief Executive, and Chief Advisor in the global ports and logistics system. He has a demonstrated history of working in Mumbai Port, West Port, Malaysia, P&O Port, Dubai Port World, Jawaharlal Nehru Port Authority, Navi Mumbai, and Adani Port and Special Economic Zone. He's a senior advisor to Indian ports and global ports. Very, very warm welcome to you, sir, and thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today. Now requesting, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a hand and please help me invite on the dais Mr. Mark Simon Benjamin, Business Manager, Port of Rotterdam, NV, the Netherlands. Very, very warm welcome to you. Mr. Simon works in the Port of Rotterdam International team as Business Manager. He's responsible for the Indian market. He's also involved in hydrogen and strategic initiatives, such as Ash Together, among the other responsibilities. Mark Simon covers the port's Oman joint venture. Mark Simon joined the Port of Rotterdam in 2020. Very, very warm welcome to you, sir. Now, I take the privilege to invite Commodore Sujeet Samaddar, NM retired founder and secretary, Society of Aerospace, Maritime and Defense Studies. Very, very warm welcome to you, sir. Commodore Samaddar is the founder and secretary of Society for Aerospace, Maritime and Defense Studies. He served in the Indian Navy for 30 years, rising to the rank of Commodore. Post-retirement, he held many senior positions, including Vice President Operations, NOVA Integrated System, CEO and Director of Sinmavia Industry India Private Limited, and Senior Consultant Industry Niti Aayog. He was also the Member Secretary of the Niti Aayog Task Force on drafting India's first comprehensive national maritime policy. He is among the early pioneers on solar thermal and green hydrogen technology in India. Mr. Samaddar is an engineering graduate from IIT Roorkee. He is also the advisor to Jackson Green. Very, very warm welcome to you, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I take this privilege to invite on the dais Mr. Tobias Winter, Director at Indo-German Energy Forum, GIZ. Very, very warm welcome to you, sir. May I please invite you on the dais? Mr. Winter is a German and holds a degree in business administration of the Rhine-Westphalia Institute of Technology. During his career, Mr. Winter has gained professional experience in renewable energy and energy-efficient projects and the corresponding legislation in Germany, India, Argentina, Uruguay, and Prague. He first worked in India in 2005 to develop a solar water residential project with Terry Bangalore. In 2015, he came back to India and since then leading the support office of the Indo-Germany Energy Forum. Very, very warm welcome to all our eminent speaker and our moderator. Now, may request our moderator to start the session. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to the organizers and thank you to the esteemed panel members. We are at a very interesting stage in the Indian ports and maritime sector. Recently, the Government of India, the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, brought out the Harit Sagar guidelines, which are the green port guidelines that establish a broad framework for greening of our major ports, for establishing a broad action plan for clean and green energy transition, as well as developing capabilities for generation, storage, and handling and bunkering of green fuels. So that includes green hydrogen, green ammonia, and green methanol. And the ministry has also brought out the Harit Nauka guidelines, which talks about greening of the inland vessels and developing an entire ecosystem and building capacities and creating capabilities for green fuel handling. And the third major recent initiative has been the government has declared setting up of hydrogen hubs at three major ports across India. That is the major ports at Kandla, VOCPT, that is Tuticorin, and the major port at Paradeep. So traditionally, the ports have, and the entire port ecosystem has been geared up towards handling cargo. And ports have been the gateways for EXIM trade for India. But now they are about to embark upon a very transformational journey where they not only have to improve their logistics efficiency, but also develop expertise in handling and managing and generation of clean energy, as well as handling storage and bunkering and export and import of green fuels as well. So to guide us and to deliberate upon these points, we have our distinguished panel members here. First of all, I would like to bring in Mr. Benjamins represents the port of Rotterdam, and the port of Rotterdam has positioned itself as the green hydrogen hub for Europe. And they have developed a lot of significant capabilities in the import, in storage, and handling of green fuels, as well as the supply of green fuels to not only the Netherlands, but other surrounding countries like Germany as well. So, Mark, if I may just request you to kind of share with us how the port of Rotterdam, the journey has evolved over the years, how the port prepared for this energy transition for handling and import of clean fuel, because there are a lot of technical challenges, there are a lot of policy and regulatory related challenges. There are safety and security issues, specifically with something like ammonia, which has its own toxicity challenge as well. So how has the port evolved and what are the way forward and the plans for the port of Rotterdam? Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the Port of Rotterdam is committed to decarbonize its industry. And of course, shipping, as you all know, is 3% of the potential carbon footprint around the world. And as the economy is growing, it's becoming more and more of an issue. That as part of its decarbonization strategy, it's 4 pillars. One important one is indeed shipping. And that's really about doing things in a smarter way, reducing things, and replacing. Reducing is about very practical matters, such as having a cleaner hull by different paints, scrumming it once or twice, sailing slower. But the new fuels thing, of course, is very relevant. That the way, and it begs all kind of interesting questions. That what we did with the strong leadership from a partner port, the Singapore Port Authority, is set up an initial chain, a green lane, that is going to look into anything from which fuels are there, what are the technologies, what are the supporting agreements or regulations that you can, and standards that you can come up with together. And then if you start reasoning through what is the energy density of a fuel, what would that imply for bunkering? And in that, all kind of trickle-down strategies occur. And it's very good because we have a particular port community that's very strong and eager to work together. Of course, it's very much in an international context, that it's far beyond lip service. Things are actually happening. That we have to anticipate for additional bunkering locations around the world. And that is happening, and I think we're distinguishing between long, short sea and deep sea strategies. that within Rotterdam, we are considering as well, okay, how can we prepare for all the different fuels that are there, methanol, ammonia, and liquid hydrogen. And in these sets of deep sea and short sea connections, where do they have an application? And I think for India, that's just on the cusp of, or it is booming, of course, where it is right in the middle between Singapore and Europe. It will have a very natural role as well. That in a very neat and polite way, if I may, I think it would be fantastic if we see what we're doing in Europe is the encouragement of liquid hydrogen, and we will see that happening in the very short future. The first ships are ordered. And that is a real meaning here in India as well, of course, with such a large domestic economy. But for the deep sea, and methanol and ammonia, yeah, that requires a lot of thinking. Ammonia may not be for cruise ships. It's a little bit more dangerous, but for the heavy industry, such as moving containers and other goods, yeah, there it is really, really important. And we will do the first ship-to-ship transfer this year. We have a very gradual approach of building the capacity from a regulatory safety framework point of view, technological point of view, as well as, of course, and just the infrastructure supporting it, very much along the lines of technology readiness levels. That my cheat sheet is here. We have a project port readiness system that ranges from, well, research, development, and actually deployment. And yeah, you see that methanol is already there, which is great news for the Indian producers too, because we need all the carriers, right? We need ammonia, we need methanol for different applications. And we already have the infrastructure up and running for that. But ammonia is, I think, currently somewhere midway development and fairly soon in deployment. Liquid hydrogen is speeding up, that both will be in action by 2028. And the first vessels are on the order books. But it has huge international ramifications. That yeah, it's wonderful and an honor to be able to discuss that here, where things are really happening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. And so let me pose the next question to Mr. Winter here. And so, Mr. Winter, the energy landscape is undergoing a complete transformation. Traditionally, the fuels that have powered our ships, that traditionally the entire port infrastructure that has been built to date. Now, all that is going to see a dramatic change, and that will require a lot of coordination among all the agencies, international as well as national agencies, to deliver energy to ships, to enable bunkering, to have port operations getting decarbonized, as well as a lot of demand is coming up, especially on the new build scenario as well. So I'm sure a lot of methanol powered ships are being ordered as well. So what are your views on how this transition is going to shape up in the near future? And what kind of shifts do you foresee going forward in this?
Yeah, thank you very much. And first of all, namaskar to everyone. Thank you for your interest in this exciting session. And thank you to MNRE and the World Bank for having me here. If I hear ports, we always now need to distinguish about facilitating import exports and demand maybe further inlands, or fuels for the ships itself, right? And if you ask me what the ports need, like, I'm not a port man, I'm an electron guy, but I have been to Port of Rotterdam maybe 6, 7 times already, and I think I saw quite a bit of your port, and what I found out is actually ports are renting out space. And the Port of Rotterdam had to make a strategic decision. Do I want to make fast money with container terminals? Or do I designate areas for the largest electrolyzer field in the world, or maybe in Europe, so other countries are picking up? Do I designate space for transformer stations for the offshore wind power to be evacuated and to be actually put into those electrolyzers? And do I have enough space for another hydrogen pipeline, which then transport either the imported ammonia or hydrogen then cracked or the produced hydrogen on site to the different off-takers, no? So for me, it was like, okay, you're the owner of the land and you decide if you want to invest a little bit more in the future, but not making money tomorrow, but maybe day after tomorrow, or no, if you really have this vision for the future, yeah. I don't know if you allow me 2-3 photos of what me excites me. If you can put the presentation of Mr. Winter, please. Is it okay if I will really be quick on this, yeah? Because for me, it's important that we kind of like set the scene, what we are talking about. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So is this ship, the first one, this ship, yeah, who knows about, no, we all talk about, yeah, Maersk has ordered the ships and so on. No. 2 ships, I think, of the big ones. So Maersk in total, I think 25 methanol ships orders, yeah, and this is not toys. This is one of the 2 first ones which are already crossing the oceans. Yeah, this is the largest methanol powered container ships in the world. And if you see the line below, no, you see 100 methanol container ships are on order to be delivered up to 2027. And this makes around 10% of total ship orders, yeah, says Bloomberg New Energy Finance. And now you imagine these ships, they need the green fuel. They need the green fuel, and they don't want methanol with carbon captured hydrogen combined with carbon captured from coal-fired power plants. No. They want sustainable carbon. So they really want carbon out of the air or biomass. No, so it's a huge market. It's a huge market. Maybe next slide. I'll finish quickly. So for me, what's so exciting is that the EU, if you're aware of this legislation, actually decided that all the big ships above 5,000 tons entering the EU or leaving the EU, if they refuel anywhere in the world green, then EU will say, okay, this counts towards your European emission reduction target. Yeah. And this is not something in the talk. This is already being decided and starting from 2025 onwards. So all those Maersk, Hamburg Süds, they have to reduce, and they are ordering those ships. Next slide. So this is already, I think, almost a year old, but still very impressive. You see, in operation, we already have around 30 methanol-powered large-scale ships, yeah? And there will be around 32 coming up this year only, yeah? And you see how it's coming up. Plus, it's said that around 300 ships are actually methanol ready and can be actually switched easily, no? And in total, we are talking about 250 ships already in the order book ready as per Clarkson. So I don't know if you're from the sector and you have a lot of money, you pay for information, yeah? And the service providers which have the best information for a lot of money, I must admit, is Clarkson's and Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Next, and then I'll stop. For ammonia, you mentioned ammonia. It's impressive that this is not at the level of methanol yet because the engines are still mainly under development, but it's coming up. So yeah, very impressive. Next slide, please. So all this data, most of the data you can actually get for free from DNV. No, there's afi.dnv.com. Please make an account there. It's amazing, yeah. And you convert this into hydrogen offtake, which India could provide to those ships. Wow. I mean, we have SECI, that's good, and we have national offtake, but if international ships, yeah, coming from Port of Rotterdam to India are willing to pay for green fuels, let them do this, yeah. Next, and then I think this is the last one. Yeah, so you were talking about what infrastructure is required. I just wanted to make everyone aware that there is this website being developed, h2ups.in, where you can actually already click, you want to see all ammonia storage or gas pipelines already existent in India. And it shows up, and it fascinates me. It's being developed and improved from time to time. And what you see, next slide, that there is already a lot of seaports handling ammonia in bulk in India, no, on the west coast and the east coast. So these ammonia terminals, they're there already, no. So you're saying, okay, what does it need? Yeah, it needs to replace the gray ammonia by green ammonia. But ammonia terminals, they're there in India, right? They're already there. Next. Only thing is, no, how to actually make those ammonia terminals being able to, also have an export loading arm and also have a way to actually do the bunkering and the refueling, no? So if there's any project developers here, next slide, and then this, I think this is really last, yeah. There is this study which I think RWE mainly paid. It's more than $50,000, and they said, we want that everyone gets this for free, so please promote this. And it's about the entire ammonia supply chain, about how to build ammonia terminals and how to, what it does it cost, and it's actually calculating the cost on how to export green ammonia to Europe. So please just have a look at this, yeah. I think I already stretched my time, but I'm so excited. For me, it's so important that we all understand, no, it's about the ports and it's about the ships and the fuels. And I'm really also looking forward to you, Mr. Mark Benjamins, if you could join for Aryan West, because there this topic will be really important. And I think Danish Embassy is also offering a training and a workshop together with my colleagues for multiple days. So I'm really excited. Sorry, you wanted to react?
Well, no, thank you very much, and such a good introduction. I would look forward to join next week, and anyone that's able to do that agenda-wise should do that. I think it's a fantastic venue, especially following up to this. If anything, the slide before this that you mentioned, we have a couple of three actually terminal operators with us from Rotterdam. They are Chain, ACE, and Vopak. And Vopak is here in India. And if you want to understand how the operationalization of ports work, I would encourage you to have just a conversation to get to sort of add flavor to what's here already. And what's very important, that bunkering in and of itself is an opportunity, but it goes hand in hand with a lot with cargo. That it is something that has a lot of layers in realization, and that it requires something, a lot of international collaboration. And where India is expanding, I think it would be fantastic as if India steps where it is, it is doing that in many ways already, but further add to the community that internationally discusses standards, etc. Because I think it's dearly missing there when it's nearly not showing itself enough as it has the potential to. That drives these discussions in a big way, and it helps to green the economies around this world, and it really goes into what you're emphasizing. But didn't mean to hog this microphone.
Thank you. Some excellent points from Tobias and Mark. Thank you so much for this. Let me bring in Commodore Samaddar for India perspective. I'm sure handling this entire clean energy transition, the bunkering of new age fuels, developing of new port infrastructure, requires a lot of readiness on part of the ports. So because there are a lot of risks that are involved in it, a lot of capacities that need to be built. So in your opinion, sir, what is the current readiness of the the major ports for India, and what needs to be done going forward to expedite and accelerate so that we can achieve that target of green hydrogen hubs across all major ports in the next 1 decade. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, a big thank you to MNRE and the World Bank for giving me this opportunity to talk about a subject which I'm passionate about. And it's very nice to hear Mr. Winter and Benjamin speak about their perspectives on what's happening on the global scene. For us, I think the governing document which will have to stand with us is the Amrit Kal Vision for 2047. Which has laid out the path for India to be the second largest economy under the present leadership. And those numbers are a bit staggering. At about $55 trillion, if you have to get to that number, then we're looking at least a 10 to 12% of the global share of merchandise export. So that means somewhere close to jumping 5 or 6 times what we've got today. And the second way of looking at that number of $55 trillion is to see what would be the contribution of the maritime sector to it. As we know, India today, we are looking at almost a share of 70% by value of our total exports. So you're looking at almost about $5.5 trillion, $6 trillion worth of merchandise travel that will happen by 2047. And that's not going to happen in a minute. It's going to take us some time, and it will take us some effort to develop our ports to meet these travel requirements. Of course, work has started. The MNRE has pushed out certain guidelines on this whole issue, and a very ambitious plan to have one green ammonia and bunkering and refueling facility in one port by 2025. Ammonia, as you mentioned, has been coming to India for many years. So that's a small delta that we need to look at. But overall, it's quite an interesting number to say that we'll have one full facility like that. For this, the government has put down about $4 million. That's 35 crores under so-called the component B of the scheme of guidelines. Now, just to get this right number and see where $4 million will take us, and that's where investors have to be here. I've got some numbers from reports. The capex number is for ammonia is $1,300 per ton. So even if you do a minimum facility for about 10,000 million tons, it's $13 million that's required to set up one bunkering facility in a port. If you do methanol, it's a little lesser at $650 per ton, and you do that works out for the same equivalent capacity of 7.5 million metric tons, $7.5 million. If you go the route of a ship-to-ship transfers, then we are looking at a bunkering vessel of an equivalent capacity, correct me if I'm wrong, is about $25 million. So that is for the same thing. To operate it itself, usually is about 3%. So not just one ship, you would probably need several of these ships. 3% would be the capex. So you're looking at annual OPEX expenditure in the region of about $5 to $6 million. The utilization rate has been planned at 60%, but the biggest challenge for most of our ports would be electricity. And that power has to be sourced from somewhere else. So like what Saurabh brought out. So it's an integrated operation that we have to think about, not only in terms of what Mr. Winter spoke about space allocation, and you also brought this out. So it's all about space. It's also about the requirement for energy and where that will come from. Harit Sagar was mentioned here, and I think I'll skip that. But where I see the opportunity for the Harit Sagar and the green hydrogen, green ammonia, and alternative fuels that we are speaking about is probably the transition that we'll see in the use of port vessels, watercrafts, tugs, and boats, which will have different applications. For example, we already have a hydro tug in the world, which uses hydrogen as an internal combustion engine, not as a fuel cell. So there are some places like that. But probably we would see a lot more electric propulsion going into harbor crafts and tugs because battery energy storage systems will be available. So you might be able to do quite a bit of work on electric propulsion plants for harbor crafts. The challenge, of course, for developing kits, and that has also been mentioned here, if you have to do a diesel to hydrogen kit, diesel to ammonia kit, diesel to methanol kit. All these are new inventions that will have to come in, and that will cost us some time and money. And I think those guys, I think Benjamin's also mentioned, I don't think we are going to see a really functional green methanol four-stroke engine anywhere before 2027, 2028, really working well. So that's something that we can look at. Maybe there, somewhere there, not there. But to come back to all this is the central question. I just wanted to frame this as to what is the sort of issues that will have to be looked at. And I think Benjamin's also mentioned this on the port readiness level criteria that has been prepared. The three levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, in three parts: research, development, and deployment. So that is the basic template. And unless we do that as a scholarly study, I have to, sorry, not just as a pure business study, but as a scholarly study of how the research, the development, and the deployment of these readiness levels are identified, and only then we can form up some sort of a plan to go in. But I have only two other sort of little more time, sort of. I'm going to take 2, 3 more minutes. The first is that all ports don't have to do everything. That should be clear. And I think the requirement there is to identify the relevance of each port to the appropriate fuel that we want to do. For example, some discussion that is going on what kind of, you mentioned the ports on the West Coast and the ports on the East Coast. So that will all get linked up to the future green corridors that we're going to. I will talk about green corridors in a minute. But more than anything else, all our ports across the world have worked on standardization. The maritime world has to work on standardization because you're traveling from one place to another. You can't have, this hose not fitting into this container, that other thing not fitting there. There has to be some standardization. And I think this is something that I would like to really submit here, that in the early stages of our planning for ports, we should definitely work with the ISO standards. The Bureau of Indian Standards have to work together with people from like Mr. Winter and Mr. Benjamins to develop interoperability. And so that our ports are prepared to meet the same specifications that are available across the world, so that the transition from one fuel to another is seamless. So this is the second point. I think I'll skip this part about the port readiness levels. I think that has been mentioned, but port readiness level also comes from 2, 3 other points. And I think I just want to highlight this point about a readiness level from a point of view of an integrated plan. The integrated plan requires you to not only co-locate bunkering, but I think it's extremely vital to also co-locate production. Much of the hazards of using these new generation fuels come from transportation. And particularly in India, if you have to travel from one state to another, there'll be 50 different regulations which will, interfere with that, because we have those systems, and there will be some standards and all of that. So the first thing is that any design of future ports, and I'll just come to that on Vadhavan and Galathia Bay, for example, needs to integrate. The first part is the production. It should be local. So if you're going to be an ammonia port, then you must make your ammonia there, not carted all the way from, I don't know, Panipat to Mumbai or someplace like that. The second, the ports will also have to start working on skills. I think we're going to be discussing that in the second part of the discussion. Third part is finance. Now, finance has to be, we can keep talking till all the cows come home on green finance and everything else. But financing ports will require our ports to work on sustainable business cases. That means there should be a clear visibility on the ROI. There should be clear visibility on the risks, and those have to be factored in for both bunkering and exports, like a combination. So this is that, but where I think the real opportunity for all of us is in the two projects that have been announced by the Prime Minister some time ago. The Vadhavan port, which has been approved by the cabinet in 2021, I think, and has already been inaugurated in August 2024. The second is the Galathia Bay. The notification for it has come out yesterday. These are virgin ports, and they are going to be not small ports. Vadhavan is going to be at least $10 billion. The government has $10 billion, so you can quietly multiply it by at least 2. It'll be $20 billion by the time we finish it. The Galathia Bay may be about $5 billion now, but surely that will be much more than $10 billion. These are two virgin ports, and these two virgin ports should be planned right now. Whatever documents I've seen so far, there is not much mention on the use of alternative fuels and bunkering. It's still, business as usual, legacy fuels, or legacy sort of systems, which has been looked at. I think this is something that we can push from the World Bank side to the MNRE to involve experts from across the world in developing these two ports world-class levels. And I'd be very happy to contribute to that in whichever way you're looking at. 16 million TUs from Galathea Bay. And the important part here is in the future, as I think as Mr. Winter also mentioned, these two ports can actually do a lot for carbon emissions. And if we work on the green corridors, for example, the Galathea Bay port is in the Nicobar Islands, which is on the eastern side of India. So you could have a first green corridor from Galathea Bay to Singapore, for example, or to even if you can go stretch our imagination to Busan or Shanghai on the east side, which could be part of the Asia-Africa growth corridor. So there's an MEA angle involved in it. Similarly, the Vadhavan port could also serve as a green corridor from Vadhavan to Fujairah or Jebel Ali or up to Jeddah. These are green corridors that could be designed. And these green corridors, as Mr. Winter has also mentioned, require green fuels. So these are some points here. I'll come back to it a little later, but let me stop here. And thank you very much for this.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing these insights. And now let me invite Dr. Karunesan to come in. A lot of success of these initiatives depend upon initiatives depends upon the private sector interest. And there needs to be a balance that needs to be achieved between stimulating the demand and encouraging the supply side as well. That requires a lot of initiatives from the government side, a lot of initiatives from the private sector side as well. So what are your thoughts on how the major ports themselves could become the hubs of private sector investments going forward in all these activities in port infrastructure, in bunkering infrastructure, and clean energy generation from the private side?
First of all, at the outset, I thank MNRE and World Bank inviting me for today. As you all know that India is marching towards third largest economies of the world. We moved from agriculture to service to now we are talking about hydrogen economy. So when we move, the fifth largest is going to be third largest economies of the world. We found India has tremendous opportunities for the clean fuel export. When you see that kind of transition which is happening, how the energy transition is happening across the globe. When we see the energy transition, the globe is looking at to decarbonize the entire world, electricity demand, which is going to be 60,000 terawatts hour. 60,000 terawatts hour is what's needed in terms of electricity demand. When such a volume of electricity demand, how are you going to meet that to bring the net transition? That means net zero transition, which is going to happen, which is purely depend on renewable power, renewable energy power, which is what required, which is what today we talk about 18 times, which is needed. When this kind of transition to decarbonize the economies and 18 times renewable energy power is needed, then this entire transition is going towards the industry transition. Energy transition moved to industry transition. Predominantly, if you look at shipping, only constitute 5 to 10% of the entire the energy consumption on the clean energy consumption. The remaining 90%, which is all towards the industry sectors like steel, aluminum, and cement, and power sector, transport sector, aviation sector. These are all going to have something like 90%, which is going to take the entire clean energy consumers. So looked at, then why the next level is what we talk about is the shipping transition. You all know that entire shipping transport, the global trade, 80% of the trade is going through ship. And it is all through transportation through sea. This 80%, when it comes to look at the energy transition, like today we talk about crude oil, fossil fuels, all something like 35%. Since the global nations are going towards the decarbonization, now this is going to increase to 50%. When this 50%, then the ports have to be equipped to handle these clean fuel. I think that is where the real challenge for the ports have to be equipped to handle all these transition from cargo handling to energy hubs. This is what we talk about. So while setting the transition from energy to industrial sector to decarbonize, moving to shipping and talk about the ports, the entire logistics chain, we move from fossil fuel to low carbon energy value chain. This is what we are moving towards. So there is a paradigm shift from the fossil fuel to clean fuel. This is what we talk about. Having said so, India has having a clear plan. Maritime India Vision 2030, Maritime India Vision, Commodore Sujeet was talking about Amrit Kaal 2047. We have outlined India is going to handle 3.5 billion tons of cargo. As on today, India handles annually 1.5 billion tons. Predominantly, if you look at more on the energy transition, energy is being transported in Indian ports. So I am very glad today India has taken the first mover advantage in terms of green hydrogen. And we have an ambitious plan that 3 ports already has been placed. Tuticorin in south and Paradip in the east coast and west coast Kandla port. All these 3 ports are well equipped, well ahead of the curve in terms of creating the infrastructure. So a couple of things what we need in terms of policy and other regulatory things. Probably we have to go through how this capital intensive industry which is going to really supported by the government. One is in terms of whether capital cost can be contained and capital subsidies can be given by the government. I think that's one area where really we have to look at. The next one is investment tax credits. So can we have some tax holidays which is available to them for the first mover advantage, at least initially 5 to 10 years, can the government of India look at providing the tax holidays? I think that could be the way forward to attract private sectors into this green hydrogen projects. The third one could be look at in terms of when we are going to develop all the Indian ports and Indian conglomerate into transition into the green hydrogen, can we have the import duties can be nullified and can be reduced so that the infrastructure, what we built, the equipment, all those things, can we have a complete reduction in import duties, or you can have a zero import duty on these goods. I think that's the way, another area where we can definitely look into that. While having these kind of things, how to attract the foreign investors? Can we have a green bonds? Whether we can come up with the green corridor, and we talk about green corridor, can we have a green bonds which is to have a creating the fund requirement for the India? I think that's one of the area where we can look at that. So couple of things, these all moving towards industry is moving, the shipping is moving, the ports are moving. I'm sure this transition, India is well equipped under the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. Today, we are taking the first mover advantage. I am sure World Bank initiatives and Surbi Goyal is here, Saurabh, you all there. You have been moving around and talking and walk the talk with all the industry players. I'm sure the way how India is taking the lead would be a role model for the rest of the nation in terms of green hydrogen, because we found this abundant renewable energy is available, which is not available in Europe and Korea and Japan. But that's where India has been chosen, the place of happening in terms of green hydrogen. I think this, I'll leave it, the next we'll talk about. Thank you so much.
Of course.
I think the interesting point here is bridge financing, right? Financing. Ultimately, all of these things are going to be dwelling on finance, and I think fintech has taken a lot of lead on this issue. So here in this audience here, and particularly for my good friends here, I would like to also suggest that there has been a lot of work which has taken place on asset monetization. Using tokenization things. So that means you don't have to buy the whole ship. You can buy a small fraction of the ship. Similarly, you can make an investment in a port, not as a full equity of 25%, which might be quite a big call. But every member in this house can buy 0.0001% of that port. So where I would really like to see this sort of work to be done is towards asset monetization, crowdfunding, using blockchain technologies, the tokenization plan, where you can have tokens for whatever $100, $1,000 per token, and that can be traded through a transparent system. So for India to develop that sort of money and also to crowdsource it, and there's a sense of participation across the world for such financial models, tokenization can be a idea. I know in Singapore there are some very nice companies who are working on tokenization. Maybe we can have a chat with them and see how asset monetization can take place, so that there's much more flexible financing available. There's opportunity for everyone to participate in it.
It's extremely serendipitous that you mentioned it, because of course Singapore is a huge tech hub. That I'm not surprised that it's there. Funny enough, we are thinking exactly along the same route, that we have indeed a system like that, and public acceptance for all these new fuels are extremely important, and I fully agree with you. But one of the other things is ship financing. In India is, of course, now you have dual flags that are allowed, but the entire financing ecosystem is now about to kick off. But I think that's where the World Bank indeed can have a very strong support as well, to provide the framework for all this thinking. That yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
So that's been one area, particularly for shipbuilding. The tokenization plan is under discussion. I don't want to discuss more than that. It is a paper that we are doing with somebody in government. So that will take us some time to develop the ideas. But conceptually, asset monetization through these programs, and there can be sub tokens. Like I think what Mr. Winter was saying in space. You don't have to buy the whole port. Make an investment in the solar part of it, or the hydrogen hub in it, or the ammonia part of it. So you have large amount of crowdfunding, and it's a token which is blockchain, whatever technologies are used, and you can trade it. So as the port develops, as the business develops, your tokens also develop. Everybody gets rich together. So that might be a way.
Thank you.
Did everyone understand? So there's a company called
Green Earth X.
Okay, then please note down.
Thank you so much. And so I just want to take a step back and bring in Mr. Benjamin's here again on the Port of Rotterdam and the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore have established a green and digital shipping corridor. And a lot of the Indian ports which are being projected and being developed as green hydrogen hubs are export-oriented hubs as well. So what strategic steps should India take to develop these or some of these ports on the same lines as a green shipping corridor paired together with some of the international ports?
Thank you very much. I think it's really about, while India is emerging as an potential export powerhouse, I think working together with the other parties that are now doing this as well, so I think it's crucial, because implementing this on a world scale is ultimately the objective. It's an international trading system that working together is extremely important in that. I think there's a huge domestic benefit as well, because India is proportionally, of course, a very large internal economy, as I understand it. And that means that there's a lot of short sea connections. And therein, as it was mentioned, that the standards that are necessary for ships, for receiving ports, they all need to seamlessly work together. That I think that is the most important thing to start. And to do this in a collaborative manner. I know from speaking from behalf of the Port of Rotterdam, we highly value the partnership with Singapore. There's enormous leadership. They're a close neighbor, and we have another neighbor that is a close neighbor to Singapore. That there must be a way that everyone here can build that system together. That yeah, only hope to take that forward.
Thank you. That's an interesting point, Mr. Benjamins, you made. And let me bring in Mr. Winter here. That it's very likely, and a lot of experts agree, that it's possibly going to be a multi-fuel, multi-use scenario, which will have to fulfill a lot of its end purposes. So we have the high seas, the merchant vessels, which need to be powered by fuels. We have the existing diesel-based fuels, which are going to be there for the foreseeable future. Then we have the short sea shipping that in India we call the coastal movement of vessels, which can definitely have their own challenges. Then the third, we have the river sea vessels or the inland vessels as well. All these have their own different characteristics. They have their own ecosystems. And how can we focus on a comprehensive energy transition strategy? Or would these require different approaches, in your opinion? And how can the ports and probably even the inland vessel waterways hubs be designed to cater to these multi-fuel demands in the future?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to show more photos actually of large container ships which are entirely powered by electricity. There is, I mean, you mentioned it. We are here at a hydrogen conference. But what you can see, what is happening in the battery space in ships, it's amazing. It's amazing. We are talking about multi-megawatt container ships, which already exist and floating inland. So my first answer to you would be electricity infrastructure. And the second answer would be electricity infrastructure. And the third answer would be electricity infrastructure. But if we talk about ocean vessels, no, then certainly we are having this debate now a lot on no methanol, and everyone is mentioning Maersk order book of those 25 at least, and then 2 already in operation. And then always the discussion starts on will ammonia come and not, and are the engines ready? You have heard, sir. And then there is special associations which actually kind of like try to miscredit a little bit ammonia and push the safety concerns up, because certainly they're not too much interested in that the electricity people take over their fuel business. But if you really see the order book, and I have shown you the databases, no, Bloomberg, Clarkson's, then I do not have that much doubt. But I must admit, I'm an electron fuel guy, so I believe in green ammonia and the future of green ammonia. And I do read a lot like Argus and those kind of, so they tend to kind of maybe kind of like overhype a little bit the ammonia. But yeah, just looking at the numbers, if you're talking about multi-fuels, I think the fuels that will be transported, that will be a lot more different fuels, right? Like, so that yes, but the fuels for the ships, for the large container ships, it's mainly methanol and ammonia coming up and biofuels, yeah, and everything else inland. It's like the developments in battery technology is just amazing. Yeah, I really must admit. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just for the fun of it, you're absolutely right. And if you're an electron man, we have to make a T-shirt actually that will sell well.
But I mean, like all the molecules are based of electrons
Yes,
again.
yes,
Also,
yes.
at the end, we are talking about green power. I'm actually happy to see that also the CEO of NTPC Renewables has joined, Sri Maheshwari ji. So I think the Prime Minister, no, he is looking forward to NTPC actually, lead this journey of the public sector investing more in green electrons and then converting it into molecules.
Absolutely, and we need to get them to Rotterdam because the second largest bunkering hub after Singapore. That it will need that. But touching upon your other point, what is really interesting to unlock the industrial potential, there is of course a great drive to reduce the percentage of logistics to GDP, and in that there is inland waterways which float obviously, and there you see an application for electrons and hydrogen. Because that's happening. That if you want to order a beer at a bar in Rotterdam, which I would strongly encourage you to your taste to come and try out, you will actually find that Heineken, sorry, sneak commercial, is barging that down with an electric barge. That it's happening in small and big ways, but it is the integral system indeed. And there's such a potential here for the fuel production and the adaptation of it, and it will only further. If you ask me what can India do, that creating that critical mass of implementing here in India will help, and it's in an affordable way, as you explained as well, what India can do. That will help spark further the implementation in the rest of the world. That I think is a potential for everyone too. That,
Very well said. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the good point here is that India has already moved ahead on the electric propulsion side at Cochin Shipyard Limited, which is making 2 of those shipyards for Norway, maybe. And it already runs a series of watercrafts for local transportation within Cochin. Cochin is almost like the Venice of is the
by KfW
Thank I didn't want to bring the commercials part, but yes, thank you very much. And I'm not batting for Cochin Shipyard Limited, but I'm talking about the technologies that exist, that we have that basic skill sets to do these works in India. And I'm sure, and they won their tender on a globally competitive basis. So that's one. And I'll wait for my turn, I guess.
I think rightly said, Commodore, that India has already moved into clean fuel crafts and also barges. And also now, as you rightly said, that India has already benchmark in terms of port transition, which has happened in the last 25 years, moved into PPP, public-private partnership. Now we are looking at the green transition. That's what it's happening in all Indian major ports. And also looking at the down the line next 7 to 10 years, we have a very ambitious plan towards clean cargo and green ports. I think that is where even World Bank is supporting in terms of greening up India ports, how a roadmap can be created and that can align with the clean fuel transition. I think that's where we are taking a lot of efforts. As you rightly said, because I was involved in Vadhavan port design and construction, we are looking at Vadhavan port, which is a 25 million TU's container port, which is going to be the top 10 of the globe. And we are totally looking at a complete clean cargo and clean fuel transition, which is going to be adopted. I think that's where India is taking. So we may be late, but we will be the latest in terms of bringing these kind of infrastructure and be a role model for the rest of the nation. I think that's where I wanted to, maybe since I'm from the industry for the last 35 years, I've seen how the evolution which has taken place. And now we are benchmarking in terms of performance. Now we will be also benchmark in terms of CO2 emission, how ports can be a completely sustainable green ports. I think that's where we are taking it to leap. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Karunesan. That leads me to my next question to you again. So, this requires, as we discussed just now, and you've also pointed out, India has a very vibrant PPP framework when it comes to the maritime sector. And the private sector participation and encouraging private participation will require a lot of streamlining in terms of approvals, clearances, developing new models, developing new financing instruments as well. And probably something like a single window clearance mechanism or something might be very helpful also. So just want to know your thoughts on all these aspects and how we can take it forward to, again, encourage and bring in private participation.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. Excellent questions. This is the need of the hour for the country. Because why I say that, when we started the port operations 3 decades back, when we all own only the government. Now we all moved to like a public-private partnership. But the ports are already become a landlord port. Just owning only the assets, the rest all the operations have been given to the global operator. And it has become a successful model for the last 25 years. And we have seen, we benchmark in terms of performance. Now this is going to be a role reverse in terms of when it comes to energy transition. Definitely hand-holding is needed, or otherwise private investors won't come forward in terms of investing money into India in terms of bringing this clean transition. So there is a kind of paradigm shift, which is also required towards the government participation along with the private sector. Then only the confidence building will happen. If you don't create that kind of ecosystem, then the private sectors won't come because this is a new energy, new technology that is not proven enough globally as well as in India wise. So when it comes, then it could be something like a blended finance system which is available, which the government can have create a seed funding where they can put some investment as a seed funding system. The private players can come into a capital and as well as operational expertise, how they can form part of this. So this can be a collaborative approach rather than just standalone. I think that could be the one way area where how the private sectors can be brought into the system. Second one is, it is not only just shared responsibility and shared risk. So all towards the shared investment. I think that's what we are, end of the day. We can't just leave this green energy mission to just leave it to the private players. So the government of India and especially Ministry of Ports and Shipping and major ports have to have a hand-holding with the private players and providing these kind of initiatives in terms of whether because today ports are becoming autonomy and they have become the authority, not like trust. That's where the transition which has happened in the last couple of years. So that should be the way how the private players can come into the picture. Next one is also the regulatory, how the regulatory mechanism can be inbuilt, where there could be an independent regulatory authority can be created. Like how today only the major ports are being controlled under the Ministry of Ports and Shipping. Can we create a kind of regulatory authority in terms of green hydrogen, national green ports authority can be created. And that could be the way how the India ports can take the lead and support the private players. That will give the confidence to them. Next, in terms of technological risk, how the R&D can be gained, further induced, and how the ports can create R&D centers, innovative centers, so they can jointly have those initiatives that would be a prime focus for the down the line next to 7 to 10 years. And that will give a confidence into the private players to come in so that they can form part of this exercise. Now, looking at again, the operation and market risk, how the market, the operations, can we create a common infrastructure facility? I think that is what the World Bank and should be, and we all been when we talk about discussing with the port authorities, can we create a common infrastructure facilities which can be created? Whether that could be the best option or would be a 50-50 hybrid model which can be created. You can create a facility up to the gate and the port inside the port can create, and that could be the common infrastructure facility which can be created. I think that's the area where we look at, and also look at the market risk. You know that you have to compete with the other fossil fuel. Definitely there is going to be a kind of shortfall, or you have to competitive pricing. Then whether the government of India or government can look into a kind of pricing mechanism, which will offset and can create a kind of subsidization in terms of fuel price or standardization of fuel price for a certain period. So these are all certain operational risk and also the risk which is involved. So these risks all can be completely, we can take care and have a long-term contractual commitment. When the ships are calling India, more than 40,000 ships, 50,000 ships are calling Indian waters, Indian ports, can we create a quota system where necessarily when you build, we have the demand and supply? How to be? Otherwise, you create demand and supply is not there, then there is going to be a mismatch. The private players are totally thrown out of gear, and you'll have a lot of cascading effects, which will in turn affect Indian investors and investing in India, and that will not send a right perspective in terms of the global scenario. I think that's very important. The quota system also can be introduced for a certain period. So overall, I look at that, the industry in the port sector, we move to landlord, but whereas here we have to bring back the whole concept that we have to be a hand-holding with the private players and also create infrastructure and take to the next level at least 7 to 10 years. You have to perform the journey, and that will give a clear mandate for the shipping companies, also the ports, as well as for the investors coming to the India. I think that's where I look at. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And thank you so much, Dr. Karunesan. And that leads me to the next point of discussion on the need for capacity building and creation of capabilities. And Commodore Samaddar, I would like to bring you in here. On all these areas, on regulation, on policy making, in terms of R&D and innovation, in terms of manpower, skilling and upskilling, in terms of, and even reskilling, there are a lot of areas that require new skill sets, new training, R&D to match the industry's requirements and India's requirements. So how can that be sort of institutionalized? How can, across all levels of government, across the private players as well? And how can India sort of go step in step with the availability of manpower and creation of infrastructure to meet this demand?
Thank you. That's a tough ask. Let me try and put my thoughts together. The overall ecosystem on the green ports feeds on different skill sets, right? And beginning with engineering, for example, from the entire gamut of civil engineering to ports engineering, that sort of thing on one side. As good mechanical engineers, we can't leave out the mechanical engineering aspects of new design gantries and pumping systems and all that. As my friend from the electronic industry should also tell me that we need to have this all digitalized in some way so that it brings in efficiency. From a finance point of view, there are some skill sets that are required to develop these business models, and they're not easy business models to make on port sustainability and port profitability. We can learn something on space management from you. So there are different skill sets that will all funnel into this whole new ecosystem that will be developed around the green ports concept. So of course, I'm not very sure where we are on this. Of course, we are the Indian Maritime University, and several of our IITs run courses on naval architecture, and the Indian Navy certainly benefited from that, because out of the 100 odd ships that we have ordered, I think 91 or 92 of those ships are all built and designed in India. Just talking about ships for a minute, I think that's very important to connect it with ports, is that with the recent order from the DG Shipping, all ships about 25 years old have to be retired. So that immediately releases about 6 million tons of new shipping that we need to do. One, and that by some calculations is about 1,400 or 1,500 new different types of ships. I'm not saying they're all VLCCs. There's a mix and match of VLCCs to barges to tugs and all that, but about 1,500. So that's not a small number. The second aspirational issue is that we have to go from 0.06% to 0.3% of the global share of shipbuilding. That's a 5-fold increase in shipbuilding. India's capacity to build ships is about 320,000 tons, but our order book position is at 60%. And I think mention was made of China, which does 59% of the global shipbuilding today. So we have some asks there. And if you have to follow the Amritkal standard, then we have to be in the top 1%, is what will take us to global standards for Amritkal 204. So just 1% of the total shipbuilding orders. But even that 1% of the global shipbuilding orders will require us to build about 2.5 to 3 million tons of ships in a year, DWT or shipping a year. Now, all of this has to be dovetailed into what the new capacities are being built. Increasingly, the ports will not only require bunkering, but will also require a lot of ship repair and retrofitment jobs, because that's entailed by the IMO conventions. The carbon capture index, the energy efficiency index, and all of that. So there's some training requirements to meet those issues. The second part of this whole ecosystem is the ability of the Indian community of investors, all stakeholders actually, to comply with all these new things that we have had in the world, on which I don't think many people know. We have, I mentioned the Clydebank Declaration for Green Shipping Corridors. It's going to create an impact on our business. We better be compliant to Clydebank declaration. We may have some reservations on point A or B or C, but by and large, the understanding of framework of doing business on a global scale, I mentioned to you about $5 trillion of trade, that has to be done with some international regulatory and compliance. Similarly, the Poseidon principles for global financing in the clean energy financing, we need to know that. There's a Sea Cargo Charter. There's a Zero Emission Maritime Buyers Alliance. There's some 5 different regulations by the IMO on ballast water management systems, on alternative fuel propulsions, and so on and so forth. So when you look at this port sector, it's actually a myriad number of issues that have to be dealt with. And I don't think any one institution can handle it. There has to be pockets of excellence developed in existing facilities. Some new facilities have to be brought in, but clearly, whilst we may have the engineering skills at the engineering level, the technician level, but the transition of those skills to meet green energy compliances is a different delta. But apart from that, where we really need to work hard, and I think that's where the World Bank has a very important role to play, is on education and developing pilot projects for sustainability. That those design principles will have to be brought in from global best practices, and basis that discussion that we have here, we can formulate syllabi for specific professionalism to go into understanding international regulatory and compliance requirements that will make the Indian business, as Dr. My friend Kumaresh brought out, that we need to be globally competitive and globally compliant and all of that. So there are different issues, but I think the MNRE is certainly doing some work on it. But maybe we have to talk to the AICTE, which is the All India Council for Technical Education, the Ministry of Human Resource and Development, Port Shipping and Highways. Many of these people will get involved. But I think that calls for a longer, larger conversation. And without doubt, unless you have the right skill sets, no amount of capability and capacity can deliver the results. So there are my some views on this. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, since I represent International Association of Port and Harbours, is the one association, is the NGO, which is holding almost 187 ports across the globe, and also 150 associate members, also more than 300 such members are there. We discuss about climate and energy transition, predominantly how the ports are to be equipped in terms of this, handling clean fuel. I think that's where it's happening, as you rightly said by Commodore. Yes, India is taking a lot of initiatives. We have since become the authorities now taking the leap, and in the international scenario, the lot of discussion which is already happening. World Port Sustainability Programs, which is what is being rolled out by IAPH, and along with the IMO, Green Voyage 2050, which is what we have been working. So India Ports has already benchmark in terms of handling all this greening and clean fuel. We are up to the mark, and even I would say we are well ahead of the curve in terms of bringing all these initiatives. We are very short time able to set a benchmark and also able to move on to the next level. I think that much. And in terms of, as I have been working with the Indian Maritime University, we also building like Port Endeavor game, the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, how that can be incorporated into the in the college university itself, and that would take the lead in terms of having the walk the talk with the students. And last, very recently, we have done 2-3 programs, these sustainable development programs, which is lead to that kind of awareness. So skill development program, which has already been happening. So that's where just I want to yes, thank you.
Thank you. I know you have your lunch waiting for you, but just before we end, I would like to invite any questions from the audience. And if there are any questions, yeah. So please first identify yourself and your organization and the panel member to whom you want to ask the question. Just hold on for the mic, please.
Hello, so I'm Maheshwaran from Chennai, and I'm not part of any organization. I'm pretty much a student. So I took the liberty to ask this question because no one else was asking anything. So I thought it wasn't a mistake if I asked any not informed questions. So, what are the current steps unexperienced or new SMEs can do, the private SMEs, in order to help you with your problems? You have so many problems from large scale to medium scale, small scale to micro scale. And small SMEs who don't have the technical expertise to do the bigger things, what can they do for you to solve your problems in terms of field work or the base level work? Was my question clear? Not clear?
Yeah. So,
okay, thank you.
Commodore, you want to take it up, or Dr. Karunesan?
I think, as I understand, that how you don't have much technical expertise, whereas how the industry can be, the challenges can be translated into opportunities, and you also have the SMEs can develop and you can take the, lot of projects from these things. I think that's the excellent way forward. And I think that's where India since we all been more on innovations and a lot of startups, which is what our Honorable Prime Minister is talking about, startup India. And I think youngsters like you, yes, the world is having enormous problems in terms of clean energy transition. I think that's the thing. But when it comes to India, still we have a lot more dots to be connected. And we have a couple of items which is related to the technology, which is readily available. Since, as I said, that where the innovation and technology R&D centers, which is not happening. Definitely, Government of India, I think when we arrived, the MNRE has come with the kind of how to motivate and how to induce the youngsters, the R&D, research and development happen. I think you visit MNRE websites, there is an opportunity which is available. And also the fund is available. You can make use of that. And also the challenges what the industry is going through is now the batteries and a lot of items, the storage and bunkering and electrolyzers. I think that is one of the area where how these areas where the R&D and the technical expertise can evolve and next in the technology so that efficiency can be brought in. When the efficiency has been brought in, this industry can grow up. So you take a lot of things which is happening already in the MNRE sites and you can take the clue from that.
Okay, we will probably take one more question before we close.
So I am from Terry. So we host the National Center of Excellence on Green Shipping and Port. So my question is, we can see that the methanol and ammonia, I mean, are really transitioning great way, especially for the international water. So looking from the port perspective, so how we are preparing or planning for, especially for onboard carbon capture and that CO2 to methanol, because it can have a long-term benefit. And having those kind of facilities in the port so that when the onboard carbon capture happens and very near in the port, we can convert those to the methanol, which can again go as a so anything we are thinking in that direction or happening globally from that perspective.
So yeah, and then Mr. Winter can also come. Yeah.
No. Just very short that I mentioned it in the very beginning. No, let's be clear. Methanol is also a solution which emits CO2. Only if you have captured the CO2 in advance, then you are using 1 unit of CO2 twice, right? But that's why it's so important, and Maersk and all those container shipping lines, they make it really clear they want sustainable carbon. So if we talk about fuel maritime legislation and reducing CO2 emissions, then mainly if we talk about methanol, we talk about sustainable carbon from biomass or direct air capture and so on. So capturing CO2 from fossil fuel oil refineries or whatever, and then combining it with green hydrogen to have methanol may be of interest for India, but on international level, especially Europe, US, there is not so much market being foreseen for methanol, which is not that much green. That may change, but right now the discussion is purely on green methanol.
That's a fantastic one. When it comes to India, what we are really geared up is that to have shore to ship the power which is going to happen with all the ports. I think that's where Government of India immediate plan that to whether our ports can be built and also supported by the facilities we're creating this shore to ship power, which is before going for a carbon capturing. So whether we can nullify the effect of all the CO2 emission, that is number one. Number two, the ports are, as I said, that from moving away from the cargo handling to the energy hub to now even you can talk about carbon credit hub. So whether that carbon credits, so when the ships are calling here in India, how these ports can be equipped to handle this carbon credit system when the ships are calling, when they are equipped with the clean fuel, how much CO2 emission which is they have saved. So that much the credit can be given to them. And that's where we are also taking it. And the port of Marmugo has come into the international system where the environmental shipping index, when the clean fuel ships calling Indian ports, yeah, we have also come up with the reduction in vessel related charges and other things. I think first of its kind in India, where this port has already introduced. And how this has been taking the international stage, how India ports are really come forward in providing that kind of incentives for the clean fuel ships calling Indian ports. So a lot of things which is already happening. Probably in the down the line, next to 5 years, when these things, clean fuel, all everything happens, I think there is a lot of synergy which is going to create, and that will be a way forward for India to take a lead in terms of the global system.
Thank you so much. And yeah,
things happening for retrofitting the
let's keep this as the last question, please.
Is there any plans or in globally happening for retrofitting the engines, existing engines to clean fuel or low carbon fuel or no hydrogen fuels or ammonia? Is that happening?
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money to.
No, but that I would recommend to actually look into this DNV database, which I have shown you, or the report. I don't know if you were able to take a photo, you just Google it, because there, thankfully to Deloitte, you will find the numbers of how many ships are considered to be methanol ready already. No, so there's a lot more ships which are ready, dual fuel, it's called, no? And there you can be assured that a lot of ships would be actually able to retrofit at considerably low cost towards methanol actually, no? So that is a reality already. Huh?
And I think if you check with the UN IMO, then to the previous question too, then you see how quickly it's being adapted, and then for carbon capture, for instance, how you sophisticatedly with the right choices can be implemented in an international community. That's where you see the gradual shift.
Thank you. Yeah, so we bring this session to a close. It's been fantastic discussion, and I would like to thank all the panel members. There's a lot of ground to cover as India transitions into its green ports and green vessels scheme and makes its ports as green hydrogen hubs. And it requires a whole of the ecosystem approach. As Dr. Karunesan put it, it's the government and the private sector to come together, to handhold each other to develop all capabilities, as well as find partners, suitable partners, international partners that could probably provide guidance in this transformational journey. I would like to also thank the organizers for this and the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to our eminent speaker, our moderator. Such a great session. And I think we all who are present here, taking some learning from you all. Thank you so much. Great learning for all of us. And now we move toward felicitating our panelist. I may request Mr. Saurabh sir to please join us at the center to felicitate Mr. Mark Simon Benjamins. Sir, I request you to please be joined at the center. Ladies and gentlemen, may I please request for a round of applause? Thank you so much. Now, I may invite Dr. Ennarasu Karunesan sir to please join us at the center. And now we are felicitating Dr. Karunesan. Requesting Commodore Sujeet Samaddar sir to please join us at the center. Ladies and gentlemen, we take part in felicitating Commodore Samaddar. Now requesting Mr. Tobias Winter sir to please join us at the center. Ladies and gentlemen, we take part and felicitate Mr. Tobias Winter. Thank you so much. And I would request Mr. Saurabh sir to please be joined at the center. Now to felicitate our moderator, I would request Commodore Sujeet Samaddar sir to please join us at the center and felicitate our moderator. What a wonderful, wonderful session that we have just witnessed. Lot of learning around the topic. Great learning, great day. Great thanks to our moderator for conducting the session so well, and great thanks to all our eminent speakers. I would request all of us to please join for a group photo. Yes, Surbhi ma'am, I would request you to please join us here at the center. So right after this, we'll have the picture with the lovely August gathering right here. One picture, as Commodore had requested me that we'll click with our audience. So I would request my photographer to please click a picture from the other side. And for sure, we'll have, because this afternoon have become special because of all of us who are present here, our wonderful, warm August gathering. So now taking a picture with all of us because thank you so much once again to all our panelists, our moderators, our warm August gathering for this wonderful session. It was great day filled with learning for all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you.